Hello everyone, how is it going? Welcome. Yeah, it has been a hot minute, and let me tell you, I've been busy last month. I ain't gonna lie here. So the main thing that really has been taking up a lot of my time, it's not that I didn't want to stream, it's just with, like, as not too long ago, my uncle passed away. Been handling stuff in the aftermath of that, and stuff in the house started breaking down. Like, had to put in a new dishwasher, had to replace our laundry, and after being on call, that just kind of wiped me out to where I had no energy. Then pets were getting sick left and right. One of them had to end up getting surgery, and that was just no fun. And taking care of that kitten after that was pretty exhausting as well. So hold on just a minute. Be back in a minute. Sorry about that. That is just one example of the kind of stuff I've been having to handle offline, and not always fun, let me tell you. But anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, sick kittens. Having to do a lot of work around the house. Just a lot of moves that work was just leaving me wiped out at the end of the day, where I had just no energy getting home, and just I wasn't in a great mental state. And then a whole bunch of stuff started happening right when I was getting ready to come back, and just I had to divert my energy because, well, we're going to be talking about what that is here in just a little bit. And let me tell you, not all of it is exactly what I call fun, but it needs to be said. So first thing is first. Let me get positioned here. Uh, get sat down. And where did that go? Boop. There we go. So first thing is first. I have decided that I'm kind of tired of how Windows is working, so I wanted to start going towards Linux. And I finally settled on bad side, and I know a bunch of people are kind of wondering why Linux. Well, it's not so much that Linux is necessarily better or worse, but it's not going down a path that I dislike. For Windows, on the other hand, well, they keep putting in new advertisements, forcing updates in just ways that tend to break things. Um, there's the advertisements and the more increased spying because they're starting to push Copilot heavily within Windows 11, and just no thanks. I don't want that locally on my system. And with the push for Copilot, they are introducing that recall feature again, and it is still capturing sensitive data again. So, no thanks. I am just going to go to a platform I know that isn't going to throw me under the bus, which is, in this case, Linux. And the reason I went with Bad Side is because it's more like the Steam Deck overall in look and feel. So on the surface, it operates a lot like you would expect off a Steam Deck, but it's a little bit more tailored to the desktop, so that it takes better advantage of bigger hardware like my Nvidia 4080. But the main reason I went with Basley in particular is because it's a little harder for me to screw up in a learning phase for Linux. Because there's just a lot of stuff you can do in Linux that Windows will not let you do, and that could be a double-edged sword. Like, if you told Linux the right commands to wipe out your entire file system, it would and say, okay, boss, you asked for it, that's what you get. And you come back and your entire computer's hosed. You have to start from scratch. I do not recommend that. Yeah, not gonna deal with that. Yeah, sorry, I like don't come into my chat promoting that kind of stuff. I just don't jive with that. Ask permission before you do that. And consider that your one and only warning there, Pot the Mauled. Anywho, so Bazite being more Steam-like and more Windows-like in its desktop environment was a little bit more familiar to me, and that's kind of why I went with it, because it just works. So if you're wanting to give Linux a try, but you're not really sure if it's for you or not, and you're kind of worried about games working on it, give Bazite a shot. You have what's called a live thumb drive, where you can try it without installing the whole thing. And you can see how Steam works. It operates just like on a Steam Deck. You use your Proton layers and all that, so a lot of games will just work out of the box. Don't really have to wrestle with it. It will just go. So, but not everything is perfect. There's a lot of VTubing stuff that just works in Windows that doesn't quite work right on Bad Side. So you kind of have to work with a little bit to get it to working. But as long as you go in it with the mindset of you're learning, things will go pretty smooth, I think. But moving forward to the next thing I kind of want to talk about, and this isn't a pressing thing, but it is definitely something we need to be kind of keeping an eye on, especially those of us who are here in the Gulf Coast area. And the Linux Seaboard too appears this year, because we already had Chantel as a tropical storm make landfall in the Carolinas. We're looking at the tropics. And as you know, this is my bread and butter, because for 2 years running now, and I'm hoping that this is the end of that run, that we're not going to get a third strike here, but I have literally worked through Idalia. Thankfully, I wasn't in direct line to that one, but my home was directly under the western eye wall for that. And last year, Helene, which I did write out in, again, the eye wall. That's a Cat 3 storm in 2023 and a Cat 4 in 2024 that had bowled over my home. I don't know how my house is still standing, but it is, and I'm thankful for that. But I'm hoping nature gives us a break, because I'm kind of tired of hurricanes. I would like a year without one for a change. But nevertheless, can't really count on Mother Nature giving us a break on that, so here we are. So we got Dexter in the North Atlantic. Doubt that's really going to be much of an issue for anybody. It'll probably just be a fish storm, maybe a concern to shipping interests. Not really a big deal for us in the States, though. Now, the one closer to home is a area of disturbed weather that's got a pretty good chance of forming. 40%, say, like, regardless of the percentage in this case, there is going to be some effects on shore, so you just kind of have to keep an eye on it, especially if you're on the Carolina, Georgia coast. And I would say Florida is not entirely ruled out yet. But I don't think this will become a strong storm, but it'll definitely be a rain concern. So you just got to keep an eye on flooding here. And I think that's the key thing mainly for these storms, is understanding how it's going to affect where you're at. It's not always about the categories or the name or the path it's taking. It's about the effects the whole system's going to have. So, and that brings us to probably the more concerning of these three that, not necessarily because of this one specifically, but what's coming behind it, which is not on the map just yet, is this tropical wave down here. It's got a 50% chance right now of development, and this could be our first major storm of the year if conditions are right. I'm not convinced conditions are just right, but if they're thinking 50% chance of development, we're probably looking at least a tropical depression or tropical storm probably by the end of the week. Now, where it goes beyond that, that's a very good question. I cannot answer that one, and the forecasters are even having a problem with that one. But there's a wave coming off behind it that is, in most of the models, looking a little bit more concerning. So as I find out more about that tropical wave, when we start getting some model guidance and for folks talking about it, I will bring it up and I'll start yapping about it. But until then, just keep an eye on the tropics, especially if you live on the Gulf Coast and Atlantic Coast and anywhere in the Caribbean. Because these storms, they tend to pop up very quickly, especially this time of year. And if we're lucky, we might get a week's lead time to kind of observe where it's going. But as Idalia and Helene have both proven, sometimes they can change course at last minute. And instead of having days to prepare, you have minutes. Which is exactly what happened. Thankfully, I was smart enough to keep an eye on it well ahead of time, and I was ready. Except for that last minute change when they kind of host my evacuation plans. But we wrote it out, we came out just fine, and that was the latest tropical rodeo I have been on, and I hope not to be on another one for a very long time. But, so, the first major thing that happened that really bummed me out, or while I was getting ready to come back and then kind of got thrown into the mental grinder. Let me get back to the window here so you can actually see what's going on. There we go. And it is the VShojo situation. Ooh, boy. So, my history with this situation goes back to the Hogwarts Legacy incident when Silverveil was... she could finally tell. I knew it happened because I have sources that were able to give me some inside info at the time. But when she was suspended internally, though they didn't call it a suspension, but what else are you going to call it, or when you're not allowed to stream? Just saying. I knew she was suspended for like a week, and then she came out and finished streaming it again. I figure at that point, she had probably already made her decision to get out of the contract. What I didn't know then was just how bad it really was, because some of what she said, it was kind of hard. Not kind of hard, but it was kind of easy to read between the lines that she was pointing to very specific people. What wasn't really clear at the time was who she was talking about. And the one thing that was crystal clear even then was that talent was not allowed to talk to her and she wasn't allowed to talk to the talent, which I think was bullshit. But when you're in retrospect, we know there was plenty to hide. So and that makes sense now that we know just how much was actually being hid by Gunrun and his C-suite. But what the reason this kind of made me very mad is when I found out just the depth of how badly that Silver was thrown under the bus. And now that we know every single talent that was on the roster was almost as badly treated, in some ways worse in some respects. I'm not going to say that or they were treated as badly as Silver, because I don't think many of them, if any, were trotted in front of Gunrun and called a disappointment like Silver was, which, that makes me want to flip a table so freaking bad. Hi, Neo, how's it going? Welcome. I probably should put links of where I'm streaming up, like, actually advertise somewhere, but I gotta ease back into this a little bit. But the reason that made me mad when I found out about it is because I didn't think that even Gunrun could stoop that low. But now that we got all these reports coming out from VShojo of just how much was not getting paid out, how many sponsorship deals have been screwed over, how many merch deals have fallen through, and like a hideous old statement here on stream that yeah, and I didn't disbelieve you. It's just there's a lot of the stuff. It's just like like just what Hinya say here alone. Like that just makes me mad. And knowing that my PC case, which is the Silverfield v Shoujo case, I absolutely love this case because I love silver. Knowing that she didn't get her cut of this case burns me up so bad. Like I wish I could scrape the V Shoujo logo off of it because they don't deserve to be on the case at this point. They really don't. But and the fact that that a case on hadn't been paid since September before she just straight up quit on stream, which my God, mad props to that woman. Like she doesn't pull her punches when she throws them. Like I got to give her credit where it's due. And she feels bad about having to kind of cover for the C-suite after that whole thing, only to get screwed over like that. And her fans that bought her merch, a lot of them probably aren't getting merch because there's no one to pay for it, and the funds that were already shelled out are probably been gone for a long time. So how do you run a company for $11 million and still find a way to lose all that and charity money in the same swing? Like that just I don't understand how you can run a company that badly. But from top to bottom, my entire assessment of that whole situation is that it is from a military perspective, which is where I'm coming from because I was a specialist promotable. Means I could have been an E5 under the right circumstances. At the time, I was kind of in a street spot. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You were definitely right about that contract. I would love to see the actual terms of that contract firsthand. Now that they're kind of defunct, but I highly doubt I'm gonna ever get a hold of that actual contract to see just how bad it really was. But from a military point of view, as essentially an NCO, the first rule of leadership is when you're in a bad situation, you don't keep your team out of the loop. You bring them into the loop and get ideas from them. You say, hey, we're in a bad situation here. I can't figure this out by myself. I need some other perspectives and I need some help. This is what's going on. Got ideas. I'm not certain in any way that that happened even within the C-suite of Shoujo, much less with the talent that could have helped him out. Let's be real. Shoujo had the most stacked English talent of any of the English VTubing companies. Like Phase Connect has solid talent, but they were not stacked like Shoujo was. I mean, like Shoujo had the top English talent, period, and somehow managed to squander this because he couldn't bring them in the loop and sit down with them and say that you can get a physical one? Oh, I would love to break that down on a video, just kind of go over line by line my assessment of it. Because, let me tell you, I mean, I'm used to reading complex paperwork, but that I'm pretty sure would be simple compared to military paperwork. But if you can't, I totally get it. But honestly, I don't think those that have fled the C-suite before the official announcement of their collapse are going to be out of the woods. In fact, I think they're going to be very much culpable, or probably for criminal acts at this point, because I mean, $500,000 in charity funds that Gunrun definitely knew about. He posed with the Iron Mouse's tablet, wearing a shirt for the Immunodeficiency Foundation. He knew, like there is no doubt. And others in the C-suite that were signing the paychecks and doing the accounting, they knew. There's a lot of culpability to go around on that, and it's only a matter of time before I would say probably the IRS and DOJ or take their slice of the pie, and they're not going to be nice about it. And I'm pretty sure the state of California is going to be even less nice about it. And oh yeah, the age of the corpo may be ending. Uh, I I I don't think it'll be the end of every corporation per se, but I think the allure of the corporation is going to be greatly diminished, and there's going to be a golden age for indies and management companies, not talent agencies. Like your Mythics, they're going to succeed because they're not there to dictate to the talent what the talent does. They're just there to help the talent keep organized. So it's more they're more like a secretary versus or a or director. Yeah, that's the best way I can think of it. So I think Hololive will probably be fine, or they'll struggle, but I think they'll ultimately be fine because of their strong JP branch. Niji Sanji, I think their English side is pretty much toast at this point. No one respects them. Phase Connect, I think will stick around because Phase Connect seems to have a pretty level head with Fishman at the helm, and he even admits he screwed up, but he brought the talent in to help him fix it because he realizes the talent is the face of the company. Yeah. When it comes to the scope of how much money was lost stolen, especially as someone who works in the corporate world, about millions, there are lots of ways they could skim off the top, and the courts can and will look at that or deducted during tax filings. Oh yeah, when those books officially get cracked open and become part of public record, or even redacted, that is going to tell quite a tale. Whew. I do not envy Gunrun's attorney if he even has one at this point, because I'll just go ahead and say it straight up. That public admission of his was I don't know who was advising him, but they were not a competent attorney. I'm sorry, that's my take on it. You don't just admit to or multiple crimes if you're trying to mount a legal defense. Let's be completely honest here. But anywho, so and then as soon as that situation calmed down, censorship started ramping up, and this is something I can do something about, and I have been. That's why I haven't been streaming the past week, as I have been writing my governor or my state representatives and senator, and my federal state senator, and even the president directly, because fuck censorship. I'll straight up say it. I do not like being told that I can and cannot buy something without it having gone through a democratic process and there was a general consensus on why it's bad. But when payment card processors are the ones doing the dictating, I kind of get sore about it. And then when that directly in turn is supported by legislation like the Online Safety Act of the UK affecting companies here in America, I get even more sore about it. Yep, thanks, thank you for stopping by. Meow. So, but so for context, this really started. Hold on, that's a different situation. Nope, that's Collective Shout. Where was it? Where was it? I know I had this up here just a minute ago. Um, it started with a group called Collective Shout. As you can see, they have went private, but some of their tweets include gems such as protecting the movie Cuties, while this group alleges that they're fighting for women's rights, trying to protect children and women, and alleging that games are contributing to these real world problems, while defending the movie Cuties. Where, how, I can't pretend to understand these people's mindset, except for being based in some twisted worldview. So it really started when they were going, or they took credit for Steam delisting or a few thousand games, and then itch.io delisting like tens of thousands of games. And when people started looking at it, like, whoa, these games were perfectly legal. Why are they being delisted? And then Steam put it in their terms of service. I believe it's line 15 that explicitly stated the terms of service as or terms and conditions of their payment providers, which is pointing the finger squarely at Visa and MasterCard. Well, did some checking, and or some time ago, this collective shout group tried to get Grand Theft Auto 5 and Detroit Become Human delisted and or banned from stores in Australia for promoting harm and bad acts against women, and Detroit Become Human for promoting and glorifying abuse of minors. There's just no other way to describe that. Problem is, in Detroit Become Human, and this is one of the games I streamed early on in my return to streaming as a VTuber. The scene in particular that they are claiming or glorifies minor abuse actually clearly paints Todd as the villain, because Todd is in the position of being Alice's dad, even though we didn't know at the time that Alice was an android. It actually makes the scene worse now in retrospect, now that we know about this, because his own flesh and blood wife and daughter had fled after an abusive outburst of his. And he was taking that frustration out on the child robot. Kara, the character you're playing as in the scene, is a maid android, or more or less a homekeeper, and she overcomes her programming and breaks free of that control to protect Alice, because she's got a conflict in her programming of protect the child and obey all commands. She chose to protect the child, but she didn't know she was an android at the time either. So, in my perspective, decrying that as some sort of dehumanizing glorification of that kind of act, when it's clearly painting the act and the perpetrator, which is Todd, as villains, is completely antithetical to their entire mission statement. So forgive me, Collective Shout, if I think you're full of crap. Oh, and then they go on to defend the movie Cutie, saying that is artistic expression, though that actually did exploit children in a not so nice way for a very provocative movie that otherwise children should not be in this situation to begin with. And I'm sorry, I will not watch that movie because I don't want to end up accidentally on a watch list. That's how strongly I feel about that movie. God, these people. But to kind of give you more context on the kind of people we're dealing with here, is they went to Steam, and Steam ignored them. Rightfully so. I wish Steam would have kept ignoring these people. But, so instead of going to their governments and say, hey, we want these games outlawed because we feel they meet this criteria to promote this, that, and the other, no, they don't do that. They go directly to the payment processors with letters like this one, where they're addressing the chief executive officer of PayPal, MasterCard, Visa, PaySafe, Discover, and Japan, which thank God Japan's got good elected leaders who are telling them to kick rocks and are pushing back against them. Because Japan is fighting a battle for us all right now, and God, I want to help them in any way I can, including spreading the word. And their entire statement here is, you can see on screen here, there were corporations facilitating and profiting from not so nice acts, incest, and or minor abuse games. The problem is, the games that were delisted were not illegal. They were properly categorized, and they were properly marked by the ESRB rating here in the United States. And if they were not legal, they were hidden by Steam and delisted. So they have a pretty good pretty good filter for this kind of stuff. On it, a second. So by them writing the payment processors instead of going through democratic process like every other person is expected to, they basically acted like the hall monitors and started forcing their twisted worldview on everybody else. No thanks, I am rejecting this. And apparently, INCOS, the National Center for Online or Sexual Exploitation, formerly known as Morality and Media, keep that name in mind because, yeah, morality. It's always people with the skeletons that are causing this, trying to dictate morals to the rest of us. You ever notice that? Let's see. Oh, that's a different issue we're going to be talking about. We're going to read our Permavant's or tweet here, and thank you, Permavant, for leaving this up, as this is a very awesome tweet that I think kind of encompasses the issue. It all started with a game Numeracy taken down from Steam not too long ago. It was one of the our collective shout was one of the groups pushing hard for the mass banning and delisting of various other games that they deemed problematic, like we just discussed. They also take credit for some games being delisted in addition to No Mercy, and there is an extensive list of those we can look at if we wanted to, but I think my point's made here. Of course, they're using as many buzzwords as they can think of, and various allegations of each game, whether it's true or not. But which is the entire point. They don't care about honesty. They care about getting what they want, which is to get things they don't like delisted because they don't agree with it and they think we should all agree with them. That's just not how the world works. I hate to break it to them. Well, actually, I do like breaking it to them because I've already been blocked by 2 of these people. But moving forward. So, funnily enough, they were also seen targeting other forms of media, such as 50 Shades of Grey and other adult women novels. But they did go for cuties. So basically, this collective shout is a group that even other women do not like. Which is true because Madame Savvy, believe that she is the wife of Smash JT, was deemed to be a man by these people, though she is very much a lady. Yeah, just putting that out there. And of course we already looked at that, and then Pirate Nation got a list of them, and the very thing that was talking about earlier, line 15 and Steam's terms of service says content that may violate the rules and standards set forth by Steam's payment processors and related card networks and banks or internet network providers, in particular certain kinds of adult-only content. And apparently, that now includes Wikipedia if you believe the Online Safety Act that the UK just passed. Because you gotta have an ID for that now, too, apparently. I don't understand these types of people. But, so, and this is a sampling of the games that were delisted. Now, I'll admit, most of these games, I just do not have a dog in the fight for. I do not care about these games. These are not games I would exactly go out of my way to find or play. But they have a right to exist. And they're properly categorized, and they're not violating law. Why shouldn't they be listed for their creators to make a buck here or there? There's someone who likes these games, otherwise they wouldn't be listed. I'm not saying that they're games I'm going to play, but if we start censoring games like this, then it becomes a lot easier to censor games like Detroit Become Human. Then it becomes easy to censor games like SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. Then it becomes easier to censor a game like Pokemon or Smash Brothers. And then eventually, they'll come for a game like Animal Crossing. It's only a matter of time. And you can see with the Online Safety Act that stuff like that's already happening because now you have to ID yourself to get to YouTube. Wikipedia, they're trying to go after Rumble or other American companies to get them to comply with this act, though they're not UK-based companies. But the UK wants us to comply to their law, which is not too different from Collective Shout, and that's not going so well for them. Because apparently there is a petition going around not only to repeal the Online Safety Act, which they've already rejected, but there's also a petition to have early UK elections as a result of that. So let's see if I can find that. hide this real quick so I don't end up accidentally showing something I don't need to. Hold on. Oh, there we go. Let me bring this back up. And there you have it from Pirate Nation. According to the UK government and parliament, it's the same type of petition or screenshot from the long, so I have no doubt this is authentic. They're at the and this was as of 16:10 Eastern, so about 5 hours ago now. It was just started earlier today and already at almost 64,000 signatures at the time of that picture's posting. That is insane. I think a lot of people are kind of fed up with the Labour Party in the UK. Call me crazy, but I'm betting when they pass the 100,000 mark, they're probably going to say, no, we are not holding a special election. You can wait till the standard cycle. Probably the same response they got for repealing the Online Safety Act petition, which it got up to closer to 500,000, I believe, before that fell off. But they gave it a no closer to 300,000. Anywho, so I want to show you one of the arguments of the National Center for the National Online Safety Center, or whatever they call themselves, the INCOS people. I want to show you what they said in reply to a tweet I made. So give me a second here. Sorry, my sinus is reading because I am not used to yapping nearly this much. But like having yap for about 30 minutes is for me a lot because I never do this kind of yapping stuff. You know, like how do people do this so much? Anywho. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is the Incos. It's a group that Incos is working with called For Women Scotland. And they were retweeting some of Melissa Tankard's stuff, and Melissa Tankard is one of the higher-ups at Collective Shout, and one of the ringleaders for what's going on. And as you can see, they blocked me after a single tweet, or pointing out the hypocrisy in one of the tweets that they shared. So, we're going to go find that tweet. Let's see. God, the insufferable group. This would have been. Oh yeah. This is the original tweet. I'm gonna read that one because she did block me, assuming I was defending the threats, and I'll let my reply tweet that they're probably not seeing, but I did quote tweeted her to clarify my statement. Make sure there's no misunderstanding and why I think this is so disingenuous. So don't usually put a content warning post, but these are grim. Collective Shout or wants payment platforms to remove these games which glorify or the R word and violence against women. No, that's not really what they're after. That's their disguise, but that's really not what they're after, right? That's kind of obvious at this point. They're kind of going after anything they just generally don't like, even though it's perfectly legal and perfectly fine. But anywho, as if to prove that these games really do turn men into beasts, they have been inundated with horrific threats. So I'll just go ahead and put this out here, so there's no misunderstanding. If there are actually threats being levied, like, they need to be reported, and they need to be dealt with by the proper authorities. I'm not condoning threats. But that's not my point here. My point here is, I don't think most of these quote-unquote threats are true. I think it's a classic case of the boy crying wolf. And so many people have cried wolf that when I see this stuff, I don't believe it unless I see proof. And that's just being real. I think they're using that as convenient cover, trying to look like the good guys when they are clearly not. No one likes these people. Is it a fraction of the RN death threats, harassment, doxing, incitement of violence against us? That's our families, malice, intimidation, and pile capture here, blah 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 blah. I don't believe any of that is true. And if it is, like the Harp authorities need to deal with it. That's just in the statement on that. And this verse says, and anyone defending these threats is getting blocked. Just FYI. And Havoc, thank you for pointing this out. Preventing people from criticizing your bigotry in order to maintain the status quo. You know feminism is powerful enough to do whatever it wants as long as people are not fighting against it. This is one example of many that prove women are the oppressive gender. Well, I'm not so sure I agree with that last part. I do agree with that first part that that's exactly what this really is preventing people from criticizing the bigotry to maintain the status quo. That is exactly what she's doing here, 100%. Rest of it, not sure I agree with, but that first part, definitely. And as person here, we read our fantasies and romance fiction. We can't be hypocrites. We will look foolish. It probably say, yeah, we're all thigh deep in the mud. That's basically kind of what she's pointing out there, which I think is hilarious. But so my tweet, and I see their response up here, is that absolute lies. Melinda and her group, Collective Shout, has defended Cuties, and this is proven. A movie that actually did exploit children to film that movie's disturbing scenes, but decided that was artistic expression. But a video game that harmed no one in reality, which is true, it's their pixels and their animated models. No actual person was involved in those unless they did motion capture, and that's expensive. A lot of these games don't have that kind of budget, being completely honest. That harm no one in reality gets decried as promoting violence. And just the side examples, Grand Theft Auto 5, which you could do that to literally everybody. They're completely fictional and NPCs. They don't even have unique dialogue, most of them. And Detroit Become Human, where they misinterpreted the opening scene for Kara's story as glorifying it when in fact it was showing the horrors of it. But moving on. Fact, threats, if actually levied, do not represent 99.99% of people who have an issue with censoring legal games. And the keyword there, and that should have included anybody where they had an ounce of common sense. I'm not defending or death threats of violence or none of that stuff. But I got blocked anyway because apparently saying that 99% of people that are being labeled this don't qualify as that. But okay, moving on. Fact, most gamers do not have an issue with violent tendencies. Most of us don't. In fact, most are productive members of society with great problem-solving skills. Let's be real, that is objective truth. You can call it what you will. And in fact, gamers are not pushing their morals onto others. They just want to be left alone, which is true. We do want to be left alone because we just want to play our games and be done at the end of the day. That's really all we want. We're simple folk. In fact, you couldn't get this pushed through on its own merits because Steam told him to kick rocks. So you behaved like a hall monitor and went to the payment processors, not your local governments, to get this legislation passed. And we all know why, because the censorship is universally rejected. Pretty basic, pretty simple. And their reply that they made and then immediately blocked me after making the reply, which I find very funny. So are you saying that because they defended a film which you and we, it's like, I doubt that we part, that they deserve the death threats? Please, someone point out to me in the statement where I said that. But please, I would love to where I said that in my statement up here. So I never said that. Like, not even close. Because not everyone sent a threat that makes once they got okay. Where did I say that? Seriously, can someone point that out? I did not say that. And then people with morals don't play games that involve rape. Where did I say that? I did not say that. These are not games I personally would like to play, but a lot of these games are not illegal, and that is the key point here. If it's not illegal and it's properly categorized, why do you get to delist it? Like, that is not your call to make. And if you don't like it, you got democratic processes to go through. Say, hey, I don't like this stuff because I think it's a blight on society. You take it to your elected representatives and you prove your case. That's how that's supposed to work. Or if you're a private entity, you can ban it in your place of business because you don't like it, or you can ban it in your own home because that's your private estate. That's how these things are supposed to work. Not going to payment processors. So, what do they do in response? Well, let's go back where we could see clearly where they carried out their threat. They had supposedly defended the threats, which is clearly not the case. Saying, "For women, Scott has blocked you." So apparently to them, calling out their hypocrisy, despite saying that 99% of the gamers would not do this stuff, because let's be real, there's always that 0.01% of every population that is going to be stupid, and that's just online culture. It sucks. We call them out, but they're going to exist. That's just reality. And then my formal response to them after the blocking, by the way, and I'll read it. I'll read it. So, since or for women Scotland blocked me, before I can reply, let me speak plain. If these death threats are true, document and report to the appropriate authorities. No one is defending death threats. And that was confirmed by the original tweet that I made. I'm not defending that crap. But that is what they're going to focus on because that is the shield they're using. Like that's why I said that exactly how I said it, because I don't want to give that any more power than it absolutely must have. I want to say, however, demonizing gamers, framing us all as violent psychopaths hell-bent on abusing women and children, we are not. If the game is legal, then you do not get to censor it because it is the first brick on the road to hell. I don't like those types of games, so I don't play them. But if they're properly categorized and labeled and comply with law, then you do not have the right to pressure companies that is essentially a utility into censoring developer speech and express without going through the democratic process first. End of line. End of line. So, yeah, I got some response from friends. I'm not going to read those on stream because I believe my point here has been thoroughly made. I don't approve of the censorship, and it needs to stop. I don't care if I'm a small streamer. I want to speak out against this as best I can. So, something new though. Now that we've gone past all that, I call it business policing, but it's kind of like friend policing and follow policing. I just don't believe it should be done. But my thoughts on this situation: We Play Studios essentially breaking ranks with the VTuber Awards. Now, for a little background here, what it looks like is that for Play Studios worked with Phillian to produce the VTuber Awards probably since its inception. And the VTuber Awards is a fun show. I love actually watching this one. The few award shows I do find fun. But Phillian is not exactly without controversy in some areas of the VTubing sphere. I don't have a problem with her personally. I think she's funny, but not everyone agrees. But for this statement here, well, let's go ahead and read it, and then I'll give my thoughts on it. As a company deeply rooted in Ukraine, We Play Studios have consistently shown a pro-Ukraine position. I mean, you live there, that kind of makes sense. I don't really have a problem with it, but let's continue. Since February 2022, we have terminated all collaborations with individuals and entities from the Russian Federation and the Republic of Belarus. We remain committed to working with partners who share and respect these values. On one hand, I get it. You kind of are in a state of war against those two governments. But on the same token, is that content creator that is just streaming, trying to make a few rubles, are they really the bad guy in that situation, or are they just never sure that's just trying to make the best of a bad situation too? I'm betting most streamers who are bypassing filters to get to Twitch are probably not bad people at the end of the day. Just putting my 2 cents out there on that. So, unfortunately, recent developments have prompted us to reevaluate our involvement in one particular project. Because Filian, to my understanding, had a collab with a Russian streamer, though I do not know exactly which one. I guess that doesn't really matter for this context. Replay Studios is discontinuing its work on the VTuber Awards and will no longer be involved in its production. This decision follows action taken by the event's host and founder, cooperation with Russian community, which is not aligned with our values and position. I'll just say this. Well, it is within their right to do this. I don't necessarily think it is a good decision, simply because it's kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face. It like the only people it's really hurting is yourselves, because you're kind of booting yourselves from a high profile event that could get you notoriety in business from outside of that sphere. And there will come a day when this conflict in the Ukraine and Russia will be concluded, and normal relations will need to start resuming, which means exchange of commerce. And if there are creators who want to do business with you, then that's probably a good way to start building decent relations back. But that's just my take on it. So, despite this, the VTuber Awards show represents a unique and ambitious initiative within the entertainment industry, and we are proud of the creative and technical contributions our team has made over the past 2 years. We are grateful to the companies and collaborators who partnered with us throughout the process. That just kind of hold on. It just kind of comes across as a little disingenuous, given that you just kind of dumped all over for one collab with a Russian creator. It might have been several, but it just seems kind of silly. Like, she's an American creator. She's not really involved in the war. I don't think collabing with Russian creators is necessarily going to make a creator pro-Russia in that conflict. But that's just me. I don't really have a dog in that fight, and I don't want a dog in that fight. I just don't think that it's my place to weigh in on that conflict, because I'm not there. And that's just really it. But moving forward. Oh, this is the Ankos. So we're dipping back into this water. So we're gonna read this excerpt that Vera provided from a article by Natalie Ford, apparently in 2018. Gamers are opposing removal of explicit game content from Steam, as long as it's properly aged or age categorized and properly tagged. Why should it be removed? Now, I'm going to consistently have that stance. So the opposition this week over our efforts to get Steam, the Walmart of video games. Oh my god, they are not the freaking Walmart of video games. Or they are the emporium of video games. They are better than Walmart, because Walmart doesn't always give you stuff you want. Steam generally has stuff you want. A little bit of a difference there. So, to get rid of pornographic and sexually violent scenes has been intense. I'm glad they told you to kick rocks back then. They still need to tell you to kick rocks now, in my opinion. But we have thousands of comments on our social media accounts, and multiple hack attempts on our website, email accounts, and angry phone calls to our office. Ankos has been called every name in the book, from religious censors to feminist radicals. Interestingly, Ankos is a nonpartisan organization that works with allies from all political and religious backgrounds. Its critics never know quite how to categorize our organization. Oh, I know exactly how to categorize your organization. You're a bunch of Karens. You are the HOA president that gets mad when the grass is a little too high, and you want to flex your power, so you start finding them until the grass is exactly a certain height. If it's a little low, you fine them. If it's a little high, you fine them. If the paint's a little off, you fine them. That is a moral busybody Karen with nothing better to do with their lives except for to make others miserable. That's how I categorize people like you, Ancus. So, and apparently they made a post. We're going to react to this live because I have not seen this yet. Oh, and we got proposed community notes, so we're going to have to take a look at those too. But we're just going to read this from me because this isn't about censorship. It's about protecting women and girls by not promoting games based on sexual bad acts of women and children. Check out the full blog from a gamer's perspective, link below. I doubt that's from a gamer's perspective, but okay. So first, it is absolutely about censorship, because none of the games being delisted are illegal, and they've all been properly categorized. So it is about censorship, 100%. But, oh, so before we read it, we're just going to read some of the comments here, so these already look funny. So Smash80 says, so you're like the whiny kid in school who tattles on everyone just to feel important. No one invited you into this community. You're not a gamer, and you sure as heck don't speak for us. And let's not forget, you've been caught hypocritically deleting tweets and condemning cuties just because your pals at Collective Shout support it. You people are sickening. Go away. You won't be missed by anyone, I promise. Bravo. Well said. I have to agree with him on that. And then Madam Savvy said your friends at Collective Shout are defending the existence of Cuties, a movie you called child exploitation and were against. What's worse, your staff are deleting the tweets that attack you to look unified with them. Why don't you interview me, an actual gamer, a female, and someone who enjoys dark fiction? You know? They should, but they won't, and I'll tell you why. Because that would poke a hole in their narrative by having an opposing point of view that actually is based in facts and a real world position. They can't have that. That would just make too much sense. But anyway, let's go ahead and read this blog here. Okay, so yeah, this is definitely Media Matters, like or what they evolved into. This was written on August 1st. Oh, fantastic. This is fairly recent. So let's see what nonsense is here, and we'll be stopping occasionally to kind of dissect it. So, trigger warning, disturbing discussion of glorified or sexual bad acts. Oh, good lord. Okay, so starting off with a trigger warning, that doesn't exactly inspire me with confidence in the quality of writing. Just being completely honest. So, I didn't have to provide any ID or anything to verify my age, and see some of the worst adult imagery, sexualized or bad acts of women I've seen. It was pretty bad. Some of the things I saw. I'm talking about games where the scenario is abducting women or holding them hostage or torturing them. Any child could access that, said Caitlin Roper, campaign manager of Collective Shout. Okay, so first question here. You're an adult, correct? So you knowingly sought this stuff out. You knew what you were looking for. And that is 9 times out of 10 a requirement to find this kind of stuff if it's categorized properly. You have to know what you're looking for and know how to find it. That's just how Steam works. Number 2, assume that the kid is in this position. Where are their parents? Why are their parents letting them access Steam unsupervised and without parental controls? The parents are the first line of defense against this stuff, and they should be. And then, just general categorization is the second line of defense. But parents need to be monitoring what their kids are doing online. Period. Forcing an adult to present ID for every little thing just to get access to even the Nvidia app, which did apparently prompt for ID access or to access in the UK. because of the Online Safety Act, like that is the unintended effects. So if I have to present my ID and dox myself just to update my drivers, that's a huge freaking problem for everyone, including children. But let's continue on here. Recently, our friends at Collective Shot in Australia, why is it always Australia coming out with the most batshit crazy people who are somehow giving a power grab? Like, I don't understand this. Like the emus need to come back. Like, the emus need to take back over, man. Celebrate their success. That's not a success. That's a blunder that is being rectified because free NSFW games are being relisted because they have nothing to do with the payment processors. So, not the W you think it is, Collective Shout. But anywho, removal of nearly 500 bad games that they disagree with from video game platforms such as Steam and itch.io. Some of those are being relisted, so not a total victory. So, but moving on. Like, the fact that these games have been removed is an incredible victory which Incos unequivocally celebrates and commends Collective Shout for. Nah, they aren't all delisted anymore, but anywho. At the same time, this incident has sparked a surprising amount of controversy and mixed reactions, which have reached national headlines. And it should, because what you're promoting is nothing short of censorship. Like, that is just the unvarnished truth. Because if you're telling an adult what they can and cannot consume under the guise of protecting a child that's probably never going to see it, is not protecting the child. That is endangering the adult's privacy and the child's privacy. Because if a child presents an ID and they are denied access to something, say like on YouTube, and they meet the terms of service of being 13, they present their ID, it gets put on file, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're not of age. You are not going to get this content." Well, guess who is probably going to find that content? Bad actors. And a bad actor finds it and opens up a loan in little Timmy's name and doesn't ever pay the loan off. Little Timmy doesn't know. Little Timmy doesn't have credit card monitoring. He doesn't have dark web monitoring. He doesn't have none of that because he's a kid. Like, he just wants to go out. He just wants to go play games with his friends or play ball. Like that's little Timmy's life. Or as a teenager, he's going to be rebellious and give his parents a hard time, but still probably not really be thinking about a car loan until he's like 16 and he has his license. But he goes to apply for a car loan when he's had a job for a while, he saved up some money, he wants to buy a car, he wants to get a loan. And then he finds out that someone opened up a loan in his name and it's destroyed his credit and he cannot get a loan on his own. How do you think little Timmy's going to feel about that? Knowing that his credit got ruined years before he could get a car because he had to scan his ID and put it online to access a YouTube video. He's probably going to feel pretty awful, don't you think? Anywho, that as both a gamer and advocate in sexual violence, I believe I have a unique perspective on the issue and can speak to the various concerns raised from both sides. Okay, so first of all, you're not a gamer. Don't claim to be. And second of all, you don't have a unique perspective. You have a moralistic outrage point of view. That's hardly unique. But moving on. In this piece, I'll walk through the events that led up to the game's removal, the objections, controversy, and my response. Oh god, I cannot wait to see your response because it's no doubt going to be full of horse crap. But anyway, No Mercy, the game that started everything. It was properly categorized and age-gated, so you had to at least claim to be 18 to see it, and you had to know where to look for it. So where were the parents of the kids that found this? Oh wait, the kids probably didn't find this. Anywho, so this all began with a game called No Mercy. This game allows players to assume the persona of man who are towards his family members with self-proclaimed huge focus on incest and male domination. Not my cup of tea, but okay. Yeah, back in March, a male gamer notified Collective Shout about the game and began sending emails to Steam requesting it be removed from the platform. I'm calling bullcrap on that, and if it was a male, then they're probably a beta male with absolutely no testosterone and no concept of fiction. But moving on. This prompted Collective Shout to invite supporters to email Steam, urging them to remove No Mercy. 3,463 emails were sent to Steam to send. Steam did not respond. Good. Steam made the right call there, telling them to kick rocks. absolutely goated response from Steam on that. Ultimately, the developer of the game, not Steam, pulled No Mercy from the platform on April 11th. Now, if the developer pulled it for their own reasons, can't stop it. That's their content. I'm not gonna sit there bash the developer if they pulled it on their own accord. But Steam not replying to them was absolutely the right call. Steam removes 500 different games. Itch.io lists 20,000 NSFW games. And those NSFW games, a lot of them had nothing to do with what they were complaining about. But because of the payment processors, those are broad umbrella and broad stroke term, they had to act. But anywho, so supporters of this campaign continued to email Steam leadership to remove all those games, which were counted as nearly 500 games by Collective Shout's team. Steam did not act on these emails, which was the right call. They should not have acted on those emails, and I would have sent one reply. Just no. If you don't like it, take it up with your government. And that would have been the end of it. I wouldn't have cared at that point. Due to this lack of response from Steam, the rightful lack of response, Collective Shout decided to launch a movement on May 26th to inform payment processors about these games. Okay, so you decided to be hall monitors and tattletales instead of, addressing it properly. Alright, so at least you're admitting to it. And a request that they stop funding them. They weren't funding them. That is paid product. Like Collective Shout, I don't know if you understand this or not, but you just interfered in the free open commerce of the planet of legal transactions. People are not going to take kindly to that. That's why you're getting so much heat now. Because you spoke up, you took credit for it, and now you made yourself a target. Like gamers don't like being told what to do. That's just the truth. A total of 1,067 emails was all it took to the payment processors. Yet no action was taken. Action was taken. Well, let's be real, because we see that clearly. A few weeks later, Collective Shout crafted an open letter with 8 global partners and experts to mainstream payment processors. Ankos was a proud co-signer of this letter, calling on these processors to stop profiting from art and incest games. Okay, so the only way I can read this is that these card processors wanted to do this anyway, and Collective Chef just handed an excuse and a scapegoat to take most of the heat. That's all that really happened here. But, moving on. These games endorse the men's or sexualized or bad acts of women and girls fly in the face of efforts to address violence against women. Except for these women do not exist. And there's nothing connecting or video game or acts to real world tendencies. That's just the facts. That we request that you demonstrate corporate social responsibility. Oh god, so many buzzwords right there in just one sentence. Like, corporations do not have social responsibility to regulate what is and is not legal product. That is for governments and people to do. Now, private businesses, yeah, they can regulate what's on their shelves and what's not on their shelves. That makes sense. But these are payment processors that control 70% of the global commerce. I'm sorry, but when you have a near monopoly, you're no longer a private business. You are a utility. It should be regulated as such. Anywho. What second? So over on the green K, I have the same rule I do on the purple T. Don't advertise that crap. If you start advertising paid follows or it's paid subs and that kind of stuff, I'm going to ban you instantly because I think you're a bot. But moving forward, we do not see how facilitating payment transactions and driving financial benefit from these unethical games is consistent with your corporate values and mission statements. Okay, my rebuttal to that is these are utilities, and if you go far enough into any supply chain, you're going to find unethical and disagreeable conduct by a company involved in every product you consume. whether it's makeup or the food you eat or the computer you're using. Someone somewhere along the way has done something unethical you would find disagreeable. So there is no ethics in consumerism in that respect. Because we're all thigh deep in the mud. Let's be completely blunt here. And the letter states, we request that you demonstrate our responsibility, immediately cease processing payments on Steam Fish in any other platform hosting similar games. So Detroit Become Human, even though that is a story about or overcoming oppression and gaining freedom through various means, whether violent or peaceful, is not appropriate according to you people because of that one opening scene. Yeah, like you people do not get to dictate what is a permissible product if you think one scene that is morally correct as it paints Todd in a bad light makes the entire game or unethical, or a movie that happens to actually exploit real world children is okay at the same vein. I cannot take your position seriously with that ethical dissonance. So, but continuing on, 5 days after this letter was sent, Steam implemented a new policy. Now, it wasn't a new policy; it was a forced policy. Let's be real. That Steam developers cannot publish content that may violate the rules and standards set forth by Steam's payment processors. In other words, you pressured Visa and MasterCard into bullying Steam into delisting the content because you found it objectionable, not because it was illegal. And related card networks or banks or internet network providers. And I'll admit, that is a scary part, that a ISP may be able to ban this stuff too on the same standards. I think that needs to be regulated before that happens, but that's just me. In particular, certain kinds of adult content. But it's never defined. It's all nebulous, which is why like 20,000 games got delisted instead of just the specific games that met certain criteria. They have a very nebulous term. And it was after they implemented the Steam began or delisting or these games. As example and screenshot, and delisted all 20,000, which has since been reversed. If it was free, they are now relisted and re-indexed. And they are negotiating with payment processors to get the other ones back up. So you kind of overplayed your hand there, Collective Shout. So we're fighting back. One thing at a time. Collective Shout team harassed after the game's removal. No, you were not harassed. You got feedback. You got criticism because you messed with the wrong crowd and the crowd didn't take it laying down like you wanted us to. That's what really happened here, but let's see your perspective. There has been an unconscionable level of aggressive threats launched against the women at Collective Shout after Steam and itch.io took action. These women have received alleged death threats, rape threats, including threats to their children. I would like to see evidence of this before I believe it. If this did happen, it should be reported, it should be addressed. But I have serious doubts if this actually happened, because every time a group like this gets criticism, this is the defense they run. Instantly. There's almost no delay. So, which is why I have a hard time believing that any of this is actually true. This is inexcusable behavior. Which, if it's happening, I agree. But I don't think it's happening. But most of the comments I've seen on Twitter, like the one Smash JT said, were not actually threatening or anything. They were just criticizing and calling their position stupid, which it is. But it's easy for groups like this to conflagrate like legitimate criticism and negative feedback with threats, because they consider anything against their point of view a threat. And that's probably how they're justifying this. Nothing merits the kind of blatant harassment, threats, and blackmail that these people have sent to Collective Shout. I need evidence. The content they have sent these women includes some of the worst statements I've seen in my life. Please show me actual evidence that this is coming from actual gamers. I don't think we're going to see that. So, in response to the backlash, Caitlin Ripper said the intention is to make us frightened, to make us fearful, and to get us to shut up. We're not going to be threatened, bullied, or out of advocating for for women and girls. Like, except you're not advocating for women and girls, you're advocating for censorship under the pretense of helping women and girls. But in fact, you're actually harming them by forcing them to give up their anonymity and privacy online. So I don't see how this is working. And that screenshot, if that was actually sent to them, I question if that actually was, because they did cut off a bunch of it, then yeah, it should be reported. It should be dealt with under the appropriate rules. But I question how legitimate that is. But responding to concerns from the gaming community, oh, this is going to be rich. Let's get started here. So, some in the gaming community have expressed concern that this could lead to censorship failures, such as ones displaying violence or LGBTQ themes, but there is really no comparison to generally violent games or LGBT plus content, and this violent and hateful content targeted at women. But that is a false bit of logic, because games like Grand Theft Auto 5 have been delisted. Games like SpongeBob have been freaking censored because of this kind of stuff. So, forgive me if I don't believe you. And games like No Mercy encourage players to sexually bad every female character and rewarded them for doing so. And not a game I personally played, but I'm not entirely convinced that's the actual fact. But moving on. The others like become every lady's worst nightmare. A colleague proposed an interesting thought experiment here. Oh, fantastic! We're getting into thought experiments for fictional content that they can't seem to separate from real world acts. Okay. Imagine that instead of the game was designed to have people hunt down and torture every other LGBT character or every person of color, would we not vehemently condemn such a game and call for its removal? Yeah, in a modern day, probably. But that's also why they are going with this line, trying to conflagrate it with something that it's not. Because they want that kind of reaction. And to be honest, if the games are legal, leave it alone. Period. It doesn't matter who the fictional victim is, as long as you know it's fiction, it's properly categorized, and parents are monitoring what their kids are doing. Second. Sorry about that. Oh, where was I? Oh, but I think if these games exist and they are legal and properly categorized, then they deserve a right to exist. Because I would rather some of these very difficult topics be explored in fiction than be discussed real world after them having happened. Just putting that simple thought out there as a thought experiment for anyone else to have some rational thought. And so, why should it be difficult if the game targets women? Like, it should be no different. If it's properly categorized and it's legal and not depicting real people, I mean, and a developer wants to make a game that covers that topic, I mean, why not let them? I mean, that doesn't mean we have to consume it. We don't have to like it. We definitely don't have to buy it. But if it's legal, like, we shouldn't be making a distinction just because it targets a certain demographic that you dislike versus another demographic. And that's kind of what they're doing here. They only got a problem with this is they want to label it as being targeting a certain demographic. And they go on to say this isn't about censorship, but it absolutely is about censorship. It's about protecting women and girls by not promoting games based on their sexual torture. And most of these games that they got delisted do not do that at all. Like, there might be one or two in there, I just don't know their names since I don't play that type of game. But like Grand Theft Auto 5, one of the games they try to get banned out of their stores, fantastic example. Like that's been a staple of Grand Theft Auto since the inception, is to buy off a lady of the night, kick her out of the car, take your money back through a forceful means, and they go on about your night. But you can also do that with male characters. You can do that with the named NPCs. Like, you can do that with literally any character. And so it's not like there is inherent discrimination on that part. So, which is why I say it is absolutely censorship. It's actually content like that silences and suppresses. How? Especially when ladies like Savvy, that was featured earlier, is a lady, and they mislabeled her as a man so they could more easily say shut up. Like that actually did happen. That making them feel unwelcome in the gaming community and afraid to speak up. But yet, Madam Savvy, Vera Dark, and dozens of others are speaking up, disagreeing with you, and you're telling them to shut up because they don't agree with you. How is that being fair to actual women gamers who disagree with you and don't want what you're proposing? The, this extreme backlash from fans of these games threatening female advocates with the R word and death threats demonstrated this reality. But you lack proof that any of that has happened. Like, you claim it, but you offer no evidence. You offer no proof that this has actually occurred. Like I can't take this seriously, so I tend to think that it has not happened. And this is why I've decided not to put my name on this blog. But yet you throw your lot in with a collective shout. Like that's not exactly a good look. The R-word games place the user as the perpetrator, enable them to virtually abuse another character, turn them into an active participant. And the key word there is character. Meaning they have no will of their own, they do not exist, they do not exhibit any of the qualities of a living being. It would be like just leaving my picture up on the screen, but not actually having a tight identity where I can move around like this. Like, there is no life in my model. It is a character. The only life this model has is the life that I give it as the person behind the model. What I ascribe to it. Not what some other person thinks it is. Because this character literally has no way to, or no agency to decide for itself, no cognizance of the world around it. It's not even aware it is a two-dimensional drawing. It's not even aware it's pixels on a screen. It just does not have any of the qualities of a living being. So their argument kind of falls apart on its face immediately when you look at it from that perspective. So they can't be an active participant if they're not living. They're just the character on screen or filling a part in the scene. So they're more akin to a chair than they are a living being. But it is actually content like that silences or suppresses. I went back there. Excuse me. Arguing that removing the R games will somehow lead to the censorship of all violent or LGBT games is a Chicken Little argument. No, it is not, because it has happened. Like we just witnessed it happen just in days before this article came out. Like with 20,000 games, do you think all of those are games like they are describing? No, in fact, most of them are not. A lot of them are just visual novels telling a story that happen to have a nude scene in it and gets qualified as adult. That is the reality of what actually happened here, not what they're claiming just happened. It misrepresents the purpose of this campaign. No, it doesn't, because it's actually what happened. And suggests that sexually abusive games are a necessary process paid to protect our creative freedom. Now they're trying to shift the overturn window, and I'm not buying it. Like, creative expression is they are a series like Game of Thrones that have these very themes in them. By their logic, those series should not exist because of those themes. Like Daenerys Targaryen. Like, that happened to her early on in season 1. She went on to be one of the most badass characters in the whole damn show. Or in the books. So, forgive me if I don't buy this argument. So, it is not ethically flawed or a logical fallacy. Because some of our greatest works feature these themes. And they illustrate parts of the story in an intimate way that otherwise would not have the same resonance and weight. But another concern raised by the gaming community is that the incident shows payment processors have too much power, and they objectively do, because they should not be able to just summarily cut off for a product from being sold on moral standards. Like, the only power they should have is legal precedent as defined by law. If it's a legal transaction, they should not have the power to cut it off. Period. So, however, like any business, it is within a payment processor's right to cease supporting content that harms their brand, violates policy, or increases liability. If they don't want to fund these types of games, they don't have to. And Matt raises a fantastic point. Why are they considered private companies when they control 70% of the global economy? Yes, 70%. We're going to look this up real quick. Does visa process? There. Okay, so, from Porter, Insights, Visa Master of the Global Payment Duopoly. So, the global payments or processing market is dominated by two major players, Visa and MasterCard. These two companies account for, according to their estimate, about 90%. I think it's closer to 70 personally, but I'm being very conservative on that estimate. So that accounts for 90% of all payment processing outside of China and have a combined market value of approximately 850 billion. How is it possible that they are global competition that two such large market niche is completely dominated by only two players? You know, that is a fantastic question because when when the Bell Telecom Company was broken up, they didn't have 90% of the market. Well, let's look into that. So, uh, pre-breakup. Let's and all right. So let's say so, and this is according to Wikipedia. But the Bell system held a virtual monopoly over the telephony infrastructure in the United States in the early 20th century up until January of 1982. And this was initiated by a divestiture of Bell operating companies in 1974 by the United States versus then Bell, now AT&T, in an antitrust suit against AT&T, for who is the successor company. So they kind of inherited the history of the Bell Corporation. There was a consent decree. Let's see. Thelkia in following the dissolution in 1984. So those. Oh, God, there was so many. So that. So ownership of the Bell Systems company was transferred to 7 independent operatings or baby bells, which sort of reduced the book value at AT&T by approximately 70%. So basically, or with the exception of a couple of local companies, they held about 80% of the U.S. market by my estimation here. I could be wrong. I'm open to exact numbers, but pretty much the same type of thing. Where a duopoly and a monopoly is the same thing when the duopoly is operating in concert, which we have documented evidence of based on how Steam and itch.io had to delist games. So they're effectively a monopoly. So back to that, I would propose, and I think there's legislation or in works for this, to regulate these payment processes where they cannot deny a legal transaction, essentially creating a utility status for payment processors. And I think that's absolutely needed to make sure this never happens again for any transaction that is legal, whether it is the original intent of the bill, which was related to the Second Amendment, or just everyday commerce. So, moving on. So others worry that the current Steam policy on content alignment with payment processors is too vague and could lead to unwarranted removal of games that people have spent time and money on, which actually did happen. I mean, they're again, documented evidence of this. This is something I agree with. Bullcrap. You only agree now because you want to shift the overturn window to something you think you can succeed on. If you can get adult content delisted that is or prawn games, then you'll expand it back to GTA 5, which is just standard adult content. And you'll keep going from there. Like this is how your type of people operate. The Steam should create more clear and robust policy, and policy that should also emphatically clarify the games based on themes of coercion and abuse or explicit content are not allowed. Again, if it doesn't qualify or as illegal, why should they have to censor it if they don't want to? So if you want that stuff or illegalized, you need to go through the democratic process. But continuing on, this is the end. Majority of gamers do not defend these types of games themselves, or instead focus on the payment process too much power and could lead to censorship of the content, which it did. However, there's a minority of people who do defend those games, claiming it's just the game, it isn't hurting anyone. And that is a very valid point because, let's be honest, pixels are just pixels on the screen. They don't exist in the real physical world. At least not that type of pixel. But moving on. However, but does it really mean it is hurting one? Yes, that is exactly what that means. So a pixel is not real. It is a blending of colors on a screen. The definition of not real. On the contrary, research shows that violent media can and does lead to increased acts of aggression in real life. They cite one study with a very small sample size. Not exactly what I call a credible study. There are 6 of them likely to become aggressive, and that wasn't limited to just video games. That was violent media, so that could be songs, could be books, could be music, could be television shows, could be movies, or it could be a story they heard from a buddy. We really don't know if all the participants were focused specifically on video games here. Just putting that out there. Experimental study for controlled causal order. Oh, and that's leading to a Facebook post. Let's see if we can actually get to that. Because I do kind of want to look at the study and kind of poke holes in it. Because I get the feeling it's a bunch of hooey. Well, you guys going to a link outside of Facebook? Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Okay, so PubMed, similar articles. Okay, so it's cited by Sexual Violence and Virtual Reality, a scoping review. I want to know their methodology. Let's see. Title, abstract. Current research system link between negative attitudes towards women and violence against women. Also, negative attitudes when considering tremendous growth of video game sales for proliferation. I want to know what their methodology was and what their sample size was. That's really what I want to showcase here. Reject, non-essential. Oh, you got to pay for full access to this? I am not paying these people. Do they have any reference to? I got their biographies. You have access to this. Okay, so I imagine someone probably does have access to this, but given the fact that it is behind a paywall, suggests to me that the study is probably not very well accepted amongst their peer groups. So I would have to say this entire study that they are citing as a source is probably best taken with a grain of salt. But if someone can actually get the data out of that, because I'm not going to give them money to rail against me, but so okay, so they increase the acceptance of rape. I doubt that seriously, but moving on. Among male participants, including beliefs like women like this. If she's wearing a short skirt, she's that's more like okay. I am definitely not buying that the study actually says that. I'm not buying that at all. These games can change us to be who we are, so we must consider why is there a market for. Look, lady, look at human history. There's always been a market for that kind of stuff. You just don't want to accept it. Now, humans have a dark aspect to them as a species. We have done a lot to overcome it, and we have overcome a lot of our baser instincts, but there's always going to be one or two people with a screw loose that is going to showcase that part of humanity that we're not really comfortable looking at. That doesn't mean we have to acknowledge it or even accept it. It just is. And it's something we have to overcome every day consciously. And bashing video games, saying they're responsible for bringing this out, is not the way to go about solving that part of our aspects. But say those games can't be changed. Say, who are we becoming? Like, well, if we go by your route, we're never going to overcome it because that's taking agency away from people to explore these things and figure out why they're bad. There is that aspect of that too that I don't think they're considering. And the quote unquote ray of light. When asked what keeps Caitlyn and all the other women in Collective Shell going despite the abuse, what abuse? They are not getting any of the level they claim they're to. I'm certain of it. So through all the threats and the abuse, there will be a little glimmer, and it will be a message from someone. I'll say, "I'm a survivor. Thank you. This means so much that you're doing this." I am calling bullcrap that even happens. Like seriously. Just like they're not getting raped, I don't think they're actually getting many of these messages either. Sure, there's probably one or two, but I don't think they're actually serious. I think it's people trolling them. And I say to myself, that's right. We can get all the hate or the abuse, the contempt, and anything else, but that's why we do what we do. We do it for the women and girls and for people who value our human rights. Human rights ain't the question. It's the fact that you're using these people as a shield for censorship that is the problem. And I want to keep saying that until I'm green in the face, because I don't think people in Collective Shout are honest with yourselves. I think you've said the lie so much you're starting to believe it. And you think you're helping them out, but you're not. But, anywho, so I do think, though, that probably wraps it up for me for the night. Almost 2 hours just yapping. I think that's probably a personal record for me. I've never just yapped this long. But I'm gonna have to fix some of the stuff on Restream so those messages disappear after a while. Because yeah. I'll leave my closing thoughts here, and I'll go back to Collective Shout being blocked. Or going in private. There's a reason that they blocked me. And it's because I called out their crap. I have put the lie to their truth. Because their truth is a lie. I grew up in an age where a lot of these same arguments were being made by religious nutcases who thought Doom was going to be the most violent thing we've ever seen in a generation. It's so many people would lose their heads and just start going on shooting rampages. That never happened. They thought that seeing bikinis on pixelated women, like when Samus was wearing her bikini for Metroid 2 and Super Metroid, that men were going to be just like what Collective Shout assumed, that we'd just be sex crazed. Didn't happen. And a lot of ultra-religious types thought that rock music was the devil and would inspire the same things. Guess what it didn't do? And I grew up playing Doom. I grew up listening to rock and roll. Or like Quiet Riot. It's like still one of my favorite bands to this day. And as an adult, I got into anime. And I still love anime. And love the music from anime. And God knows anime gets a lot of bullcrap these days. But you get my point. I also played Metroid 2, and saw Samus in the bikini. Am I sex crazed? Am I a maniac? Am I just going to go unhinged at a moment's notice? No. That's because my parents raised me to be a decent human being. I like to think I'm doing my late dad proud, but I got to take care of my mother. Because that's what responsible people do. They understand they're part of a society, and they don't blow up at each other for it. If we don't censor each other, we say, hey, how can we help? And Collective Shout, sorry to say, what you are trying to do is not helping. It is actually hurting people, including the women and children you claim to protect. Because the minute they have to give up their ID to get something like Grand Theft Auto 5, like without their parents and owning it, then their ID's just been collected and given to the government. Their parents need to be aware of what they're doing. Like plain and simple. The government should not be doing it, and you should not be doing it. And I'll go ahead and leave that there. Let's see. I don't know if there's anyone on the Twitch side I can raid out to. Let's see. Let's see. Who have we got on the Twitch side to raid out to? Uh, let's see. Yeah, we're gonna raid out the Silinx, as we have not raided him for quite some time. Oh, great. Okay, so if I needed an example of some of what can be done for parental control, even though my account is clearly marked 18, I'm still getting a warning saying, like, hold on a second, this is intended for certain audiences and may contain blah, 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 and may not be appropriate for you to watch. Even though I am well over 18, I'm still getting that warning. So, with all due respect, I like to shout, kick rocks. Let parents do their jobs. But with that, though, we are going to go ahead and raid out to Psy. We're on the purple app side. Let's see. And we should be back tomorrow night with some Stellar Blade. Hopefully it'll go well, but I also have to migrate some stuff and probably redo my Linux install because I need to move it to a bigger hard drive. But we'll be doing that over the coming days. And with that, good night, everyone. It's great to be back, and I will see you all tomorrow. So good night, everyone.